everybody. Welcome to the Abroaders Travel Podcast, your weekly meetup with thousands of entrepreneurs, hustlers, creators, nomads, ninjas, wanderers, and world changers, all seeking to build the skills and connections to live a life without borders. If you want to learn more about what we do or download our entire podcast archive, check out the website, abroaders.com. Happy Wednesday morning and welcome to another episode of the Abroaders Podcast. I'm Eric here with AJ in Austin, Texas. Today is Wednesday, October 11th, and this is episode 192. AJ, how you doing?
Doing all right, man. How about you?
Good. We got a great show today. We are going to talk about booking first-class awards to Europe, and it's not always easy, so we've got some tips to share about how you can do that and also how you can guarantee yourself a business class ticket and give yourself a really good chance at an upgrade. We've also got news and updates, a couple of interesting things that happened this week, so we want to cover those. And at the end of the show, I've got an interview with Crystal Kelly. I want to talk to you a little bit about this before we cut to the interview, because this is, she did the Mongol Rally and had a crazy cool experience. So the interviews definitely was a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to share that. But we gotta get an Abroaders team together.
So for folks that aren't familiar with it, the Mongol Rally is essentially you buy a small piece of shit car. That's generally what people do, and you drive from the UK to Mongolia. So you can just imagine the different routes you can take. And after you had the interview there, you shared with me is generally you go through the sea, north of the sea, or under the sea, as far as the Black Sea goes.
Yeah.
But fascinating. I mean, I've seen some videos. If you just like Google or YouTube, like Mongol Rally highlight videos, there's some interesting stuff.
Yep. So that'll be at the end of the show. Got a little just featured segment. I learned some interesting stuff, and she had a pretty cool approach and ended up doing a big part of this solo. So you're looking at like 10,000 miles roughly to drive, and so very cool story. Definitely encourage you guys to stick around for the end of the show. We've got show notes for today at abroaders.com/192, and there's definitely a couple of links here from news and updates. Let's start with that.
Yeah, so the first thing is we've got that increased sign-up bonus on the Starwood Amex business card. So this is an offer that normally floats around 25,000 SPG points, and periodically, a couple times a year, it'll go up to 35, and now is one of those times. However, this is a little bit different than the normal offer. I think the normal offer is $5,000 spend over 6 months, which is kind of unusual, or 3 months, but this one is $6,000 spent in the first 3 months for that 25,000 point bonus, and then another $4K spent in the total 6 months. So you're looking at a total of $10,000 spent in the first 6 months, if I'm reading that correctly.
Yeah.
For 35,000 points.
I'm not sure if that's also the offer with the personal version or if it's actually just the business card that has the increased bonus. I know for sure that the total spend to get all 35,000 points is $6K for the business card. Let me rethink my inks here. And go.
So the first thing we've got here is an increased sign-up bonus on the SPG Amex business card. So that offer, along with the personal card, they're both normally around 25,000 SPG points. What we've got here with the business card offer is it is 35,000 points, but it's not the most straightforward as far as the sign-up bonus and the minimum spend. So the first 25,000 points that you get is if you put $6,000 to spend on the card in the first 3 months. And then another $4,000 to spend over the next 3 months. So a total of $10,000 over 6 months, but $6,000 of that needs to be in the first 3 months to get your first 25,000 SPG points. And then if you spend another 4K after that, you will get an additional 10,000 points. So this might not seem like a very good offer because it's only 35,000 points and we're used to seeing offers 50,000 plus, but these points are still very, very valuable. So it's something to consider if you've got that type of spending capacity to get this bonus.
Yeah, absolutely. And so this is the first time that I can remember that the personal card didn't go up at the same time. Typically, they've bumped these two bonuses from 25 to 35 together. So the personal version is still available, 25,000 points after spending 3,000 in 90 days. So nothing's changed about that one. This one for the business card, they are saying, at least at this point, that the offer is going to expire on November 1st. So you've got a little bit of time, but it's only for a few weeks. So this is a relatively short-term thing. you're eligible for this bonus as well as the personal one if you've never gotten the bonus on this card. So if you've ever gotten an SPG card and earned a sign-up bonus, that would definitely be me. You're not eligible for this one, but if you've never got it, this is super valuable. And actually, when we get into the discussion later in the show about first class to Europe, there's a lot of these that you really wish you had some SPG points to make things easier on you. So this is by far the most valuable type of point, just one-to-one. There's other great types of points, and this is probably not the first card I would sign up for. 80,000 with the Ink Business Preferred.
I guess the only thing about this SPG points is there's a little bit of uncertainty about the future.
Yes. Yeah.
So, I mean, with credit card recommendations, a lot of people have heard us say that Chase points are the most valuable, and they're generally the most valuable because they're the most versatile. But as far as potency, SPG points are highly valuable because of the transfer bonus you get, which is a huge kicker if you transfer in those 20,000 point chunks.
Well, yeah, and let's talk about for just a second what's going on with SPG. So the reason for the uncertainty is that for the last year or so, they've been in the middle of a merger with Marriott. And so since the SPG program started, they have been doing these point transfers to, I think it's about a little over 30 different frequent flyer program partners. And so that's what makes these points so useful. There's no announcement thus far that said anything is going to happen to the transferability of these points, but the expectation is that eventually SPG and Marriott are going to combine into a single loyalty program.
Right.
No date for that yet. So I think you're really safe getting SPG points. If you think you're going to be taking any significant trips in the next 12 months, you should have plenty of time to use them. And I do expect that there's going to be some advance notice if anything happens to these points being able to be transferred. So I wouldn't worry about the change in terms of whether you should get this sign-up bonus, because if anything does happen, it's going to probably mean that this card is eventually going to go away when the programs merge. So now's a great time to get extra points for this. And if you complete the spend, you're looking at 45,000 points total. So 35,000 bonus plus the 1 point per dollar spent over 10K spend. 40,000 points is worth 50,000 frequent flyer miles because of a nice transfer bonus where you get an extra 5,000 when you transfer in increments of 20. So this is a cool card and definitely worth it. If you haven't gotten a bonus on this one yet, now's the time.
Yeah, moving to the other side of the spectrum on cards and points, just felt like we should mention this. Bank of America's got some new restrictions on credit card applications. When I read that, I was kind of like, who cares? Don't flatter yourself. Do people really want your cards that much? But what that looks like is 2 cards per rolling 2 months, 3 cards per rolling 12 months, and 4 cards per rolling 24 months. So that's like their version of Chase's 524. Real quick, I want to mention other cards or other credit card companies and how they do things. This is from 1 mile at a time. I think it's a pretty good recap. So American Express will only let you earn the sign-up bonus on a given card once in a lifetime. Chase has the 524, as we all know about, 5 cards over a 24-month rolling period. And then Citi limits you to earning 1 sign-up bonus in each family of cards once every 24 months.
So one final note about this Bank of America policy is it only applies to their cards. So unlike the 524, where Chase takes a look at all the personal cards that you've opened with any bank, Bank of America will only approve you for 2 of their cards in a rolling 2-month period or 3 in a rolling 12-month. And frankly, there aren't that many great Bank of America cards to take a look at. The one that I think is the most valuable by a long shot is the Alaska Airlines card. And so that's one that I would probably start with. But beyond that, there's not a ton of awesome products. So most people probably won't run into this rule. But good to keep in mind, there are a few different versions. So there's an Alaska Personal and Alaska Business. And if you've maxed out some of the applications with Chase, Citi, and Amex, this could be relevant. So new note, and we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah. Next up, we've got an Amex offer that I think is pretty good. So how the deal works is if you get an Amazon Prime subscription for a year, you'll get 5,000 Amex membership rewards points. And the reason I think that's really strong is not that it has nothing to do with lost my train of thought there. Sorry, Kate. I'm going to just run that back from the top. Next up, we've got what I think is a really good Amex offer. So you get 5,000 Amex points when you sign up for a yearly membership of Amazon Prime. And this runs through January 31st of this coming next year. I think this is really good because there's just great alignment. If you don't have Amazon Prime, I think for more people than not, there's really no reason not to have Amazon Prime. I think if people actually evaluate the way they purchase things and shop online, it makes sense to get Amazon Prime. And 5,000 points is substantial. This isn't, do a bunch of work and spend it qualifying restaurants to potentially get up to 1,000 points over certain windows, So I guess the question here is, if you have this offer, I think it makes sense for you to spend 10 minutes looking into Amazon Prime, and if you see value there, and if so, boom, you got a cool new service that a lot of people love, and you get 5,000 points.
Yeah, I would imagine for many people out there, Amazon Prime is just kind of a foregone conclusion, something you buy anyways. So this could be an opportunity to just get 5,000 membership rewards points on top of that and just renew out your membership for a full year. This is targeted like all Amex offers, so it depends on which Amex cards you have. I was just taking a look at a couple of ours. I haven't seen it yet, but it depends. Again, they kind of do this randomly and assign it to different cards. So this could be there, I think, for the Amex Platinum card, both business and personal. Amex Everyday cards get a lot of good Amex offers, and then the Premier Rewards Gold and the Business Gold card. Mm-hmm. Those are the ones to check first, and SPG cards also occasionally will get these. So take a look in your Amex account and see if you can find this one under Amex offers. If you can and you value Amazon Prime, I'd say 5,000 membership rewards could be worth as much as $100, if not more, depending really on how you redeem them.
Yeah. Moving on, we've got some kind of good news. So you can now book Singapore Airlines Awards via United's website. So what that means is if you've got your United Mileage Plus miles, or maybe you transfer some Chase points over there and you want to book a flight, it looks like some Singapore flights are going to be showing up. It looks like we got no Trans-Pacific and business, maybe even economy, but some flights are showing up. And this, I think, is something we can take an extra minute to talk about. I've talked with a lot of people lately, and especially when I was in Amsterdam, talking with some folks that aren't as familiar as the American ecosystem of frequent flyer miles and the banking, and these people looked at me like I was an idiot when I talked about the complexity of booking flights sometimes. And for them, they're all KLM people, and that website works pretty well, and it's pretty straightforward. Sure. And I was trying to explain to them, well, it doesn't always work like that. There are some flights you can book that the website doesn't show you. Yeah, well, why does the website show you? I don't know. It's complicated. There's lots of airlines, lots of programs, lots of rules, and having all those things work together is difficult. And I don't know. I think some people are surprised that it's not as straightforward as just going to the website and booking your flight.
Yeah, if you are looking for Singapore awards, the one thing to be aware of is if you have access to Singapore miles, which they're transfer partners with all four of the transferable currencies. So if you can do it that way, typically the price is going to be as good or better in miles by booking through Singapore, and the availability is going to be much better. So the fact that United shows it, if you're definitely booking with Mileage Plus, this just gives you some additional potential options, which is always a good thing. But if you're looking specifically for Singapore flights and you've got Chase or you've got Amex or you've got Citi or SPG, you want to check the Singapore KrisFlyer website. But the reverse is also important to know. So because Singapore gives their own members better availability for their own flights, if you find a flight that your heart is set on the Singapore website and you think you're going to book it with United miles, you need to make sure that you can find it on the United website as well, because there's at least 3/4 of the seats that you're going to find on Singapore site are bookable only with Singapore miles. And so that's something to just keep in mind, especially if you're making a non-reversible transfer, say from Chase to United. You might be very disappointed, especially looking at premium cabin seats. And just be aware, you could always transfer those Chase directly to Singapore and get exactly what you want. Have your cake and eat it too. All right, next up we've got a little bit of good news for British Airways. So Virgin America and Alaska Airlines are in the middle of a merger. And so one of the parts of this consolidation is that Virgin American flights are going to soon have Alaska Airlines flight numbers. And the reason that matters for us points enthusiasts is that British Airways partners with Alaska, but does not partner with Virgin America. And so as of April 25th of next year, all flights operated by Virgin America are going to now have Alaska Airlines flight numbers, which means they're bookable through BA. So the big takeaway here is that if your travel is departing anytime after April 25th of 2018, all the Virgin flights are now going to be available through BA's booking engine. And the nice thing here is that, with Alaska, you've got sort of like a zone-based chart where a flight within the U.S. is generally going to cost $12,500 each way in economy. With British Airways, some of the shorter flights can be potentially as low as $7,500 for the economy tickets, and BA can be a better deal to Hawaii as well. Like Los Angeles to Maui is only $12,500, whereas if you were using Alaska miles, you'd likely pay more. So this is just good news all around. Again, it only helps you if your flight is departing after April of next year. But as we kind of get into the next year, those flights, there'll be more and more availability that's opening up on Virgin America. So keep that in mind and give British Airways a look before you book.
Speaking of British Airways, we're going to talk about Aer Lingus because British Airways Avios could be a good way to be on an Aer Lingus flight. So Aer Lingus is going to start flying to Philadelphia in March of 2018. That isn't super exciting news other than the fact that it's just another way to get from the United States to Europe, more or less. Because, when I flew home from Amsterdam, we got a cheap Ryanair flight to Dublin and then booked an award home from Dublin. And the good news about this flight is straight from Dublin to Philadelphia is 20,000 Avios.
Yeah.
So you're talking about a round trip from the United States to Europe, Ireland. Ireland's a desirable place as it is for 40,000 Avios. So
two things I really like about this, one on each side of the Atlantic here. So number one, because Philadelphia is an American hub, you've got a lot of connectivity to get to other places in the U.S. So if you're starting in Europe, you can arrive in Philly and you've got really good chances of having American award availability to continue your onward flight. And then on the European side, Dublin has some good availability. You can connect through British Airways to other places around Europe as well. But Ryanair is just such an affordable carrier that it's a great way to combine
you can go anywhere in Europe from Dublin with Ryanair.
Yeah, and typically pay less than $100. Especially if you book a little bit in advance, you're eventually going to pay a little bit more than you see on the purchase screen.
Yeah, but
with tax, their fees and stuff.
Yeah, they nickel and dime, but as long as you make sure you check in before your flight, if you play by their stupid rules that are fairly simple, it's really not that complicated. It can just be annoying if you miss something. I flew Ryanair not just a couple weeks ago, and it wasn't a bad experience. I wasn't looking forward to it just because, I don't know. But I was on the plane, I'm like, this isn't that bad, it's fine.
All right. So anyways, that's a good way to get to Europe for 20,000 points or to get back from Europe for 20,000 Avios and lots of options to connect with paid flights or other award tickets. So let's come back to the Etihad. We got one piece of news about Etihad that comes right into the conversation I want to have about first class awards to Europe.
Let's talk about Turkey.
Yes.
So for those that don't know, U.S. and Turkey are not happy with one another right now. Their visa services both ways have been suspended. Both embassies have released identical press releases. The United States said something along the lines of, after reevaluating things, Turkey doesn't seem committed to protecting blah, 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 American citizens in Turkey. So what this means is that Americans can't go to Turkey right now. And it's got to be an exception, whether you're a dual citizen or something, that then you can obviously head home. But no vacations to Turkey right now. And for the Turkish folk, the visa process to come to the U.S. is a bit more complicated, but it's the same idea. And so if you were even, I believe, routing through Turkey, I don't know if there's issues there, but Turkish Airlines did offer refunds for folks heading at least to Turkey. I don't know if they allow you to route.
Yep. So before we hit the panic button, the good news is that you can connect.
Okay.
So you can fly Turkish Airlines, you can fly through Istanbul and connect elsewhere, carry on your travel to anywhere that you can connect through Turkey. So that could be for flights from the U.S. that connect in Istanbul onwards to Asia or the Middle East or Africa, and also to other places in Europe. The only thing you're not going to be able to do is leave the airport or check into the country because of this thing. Now, hopefully this is something that will get resolved sooner rather than later. There's not really anything that should prevent the two sides from working this out. And, the U.S. and Turkey have had diplomatic relations for a very long time. So if you have travel plans and they involve being in Turkey, you need to have a backup plan. But if you're just connecting, the good news is this is not going to screw up award itineraries, that it's just a transit via Istanbul or one of the other
They're a little bit more reasonable
Turkey
than the United States, where you cannot even connect
Wow.
on a flight that touches the U.S. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But yeah, so that's interesting. Kind of disappointing, but yeah, I think that'll be probably resolved within the next month. Is a guess. I don't know.
Hopefully, we'll come back to visit that. So before we get to first class to Europe, I want to answer one listener question. This comes from Daniel, who's from the U.S. He is considering the Southwest Companion Pass, which we talked about a few shows ago. Officially, the 60,000 point offer that was available on all of the business and personal cards is no more. That ended on October 4th. However, I wanted to bring this up because the business card, one of them, still has a 60K offer, and the personal cards only went down to 40,000. Companion Pass can be had if you are able to get 110,000 Southwest points in a single calendar year, which means if you get one of these personal cards and the 60K business card, you're at 100,000. They'll take about 6,000, I think, spend to get those bonuses. So you basically only have to spend an extra $4,000 before you would accrue your companion pass. So there is a possibility of getting the companion pass still. We are within the window where you can have your points post in 2018. So really good news here. And so Daniel's question is that he's currently up against the 524 rule. He has 3 cards that definitely count. And he was also an authorized user on his fiance's Sapphire Preferred card last year, but she's closed that account. And so he knows he needs to get 2 Southwest cards to be able to get this companion pass, and he's wondering if that authorized user is going to be a problem. So good news for Daniel. I guess sort of mixed news. Good news in the sense that you're good to go. You should be able to get both of these cards. The bad news is that you may have to call reconsideration and talk with Chase. The automated system does count authorized users. It just basically doesn't know the difference. It's looking at your credit report and it sees that he's on his fiance's card. So that's probably going to count from the automated system. So what I would recommend is applying for one of the cards. Probably I would go with the business card first, just because the business applications can be a little bit more tricky. That one should go through automatically for him. And then I would apply for the personal card. And then you're just going to want to call the reconsideration number if your application goes to pending. And what you need to do is just let them know that Chase Sapphire account, you were not the primary, you were an authorized user. They're going to be able to look that up and see that that's in fact the case. And then they'll manually put it through and kind of work you around the 524 rule. So,
and I'm guessing it wouldn't hurt to let them know how much you enjoy flying Southwest Airlines, and that you just thought it made sense to get that card if you're going to fly Southwest all the time. There's an advertisement. They told me that it was a good card. It doesn't hurt to give them additional reasons, I don't think.
Yeah, one reason I wouldn't give them, though, is getting the companion pass. So
but that's what I'm saying. You don't want to say, hey, so I know I got my business in and I might get this 524 thing, so technically I'm right, so approve me for the card. I think you say, hey, I've got a small business. I like to fly Southwest. I saw a couple offers. I thought it made sense. I've used Rapid Rewards before and I liked them, and there's this bonus, and it's my go-to airline, and I wanted to,
That's exactly the script that I think you want to use. Anyway, so good news for Daniel and for everybody else, because this is I was unsure of what was going to happen after the 4th of October.
Man, one more thing. I am so sorry. I'm sure you're listening right now. Who was it? Cynthia? I had a conversation with somebody that said they had a lot of success with the companion pass. I will dig up your name. I'll give you a shout out in the next episode. I'm sorry, but it's cool to hear people execute on that.
Yes.
I can't believe I can't remember the name, but it's a couple that just got into retirement, and they've used the companion pass to trot around the country. They're doing some house sitting, so they just find house sitting in cool places. Hop on the companion pass, go house sit, move around. Awesome. Now they're
Man, you can't beat buy one get one free. I mean, what?
Especially with using miles.
Yeah.
You know, they don't even make you buy the flight. You burn through the miles that you earn to get the damn thing, and then you get,
Yeah, it's probably, I would say conservatively, you're looking at $4,000 worth of airfare by getting the companion pass, and that's just using the points that you're going to earn. And then you also get buy one, get one free on anything that exceeds the number of points you've got. So.
And I don't mind flying Southwest Airlines. I've had good experiences flying Southwest. And I've flown Southwest to, I think, Mexico, Dominican Republic, and domestically. It's like, I don't know. It's good service.
All right. Well, Daniel, thank you very much for sending in the question. If you have a question for us, you can find a link to submit your question on the show notes page, abroaders.com/192, and we'll try and get to it on a future episode. So a couple of other items that we don't have time to get into more detail, but we are going to have some links in the show notes here. We've got Chase offering bonus ultimate rewards points for purchases through a couple of different mobile wallets. So those are things like Android Pay, Apple Pay. So through November 4th, you can get some extra points that way. We've got a link that's got the details for that. We've also got $50 off a $300 stay at select Hyatt hotels if you have the Hyatt credit card. And we've got 5,000 bonus Hilton points after making 2 stays. There's a post about that promotion and how you can take advantage. So should be worth checking out if you've already got a couple of Hilton stays coming up. And then lastly, there is a new website to manage your Global Entry membership. You don't really need to do anything if you've already got Global Entry, and you don't have to renew or make any changes. But at the time you do, you are going to need to register for this new site. So we've got a link and some information about what you need to know to take care of your Global Entry and make sure you can skip the line when you come back to the US. All right, so for today's core content, we are going to talk about first class flights to Europe. This is something that came up for me very recently with an award booking. There's a lot of great options to book business class and keep yourself out of economy, nice and comfortable. But first class is a level above, and there is a decreasing number of options, just kind of broadly speaking, for first class.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to share some strategies that can help you confirm a first class ticket. Because it's just, it's a different experience. Definitely, most of these aircraft that you've got, business and first class, has separate cabins. You're talking about maybe 40 or 50 business class seats and only 6 or 8 first class seats.
So I've actually never flown first class on a legit long haul flight. Business class a handful of times. My imagination tells me the difference between business and first class is think of all the great things about business class and just amplify them. A bigger seat, a little bit more room, a little bit bigger TV screen, a little bit nicer liquor, a little bit nicer food, a little bit nicer service, which is hard to imagine from some business classes, but they do it.
Yeah, I think that's a fair thing. Like overall, the difference between economy and business is huge, and the difference between business and first is more subtle. But definitely, if you're saving up points and you don't get to travel that often, a lot of times the price in additional miles to fly in first class is not really that significant, and it can be well worth it just to have a really unique and different experience. The only first class products that I've flown are Cathay Pacific, Japan Airlines, and Singapore personally, and we've booked people on a lot of them. But the experience is definitely very cool, and in business class, the flight attendants, maybe there's a crew of like 4 to 6 people that are servicing the business class cabin, and they've got 40 or 50 people to take care of. In first class, there's typically 2 or 3 people that are there for the 6 or 8 people, and often
you got some empty seats, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's kind of the fundamental thing about the strategy we're going to share today. The airlines obviously want to sell these tickets. Now, you were just taking a look at Lufthansa first class pricing, and what are the tickets for?
I just looked at just Houston to Manchester because Singapore's got that Fifth Freedom, and the cheapest flight on the day, it's just random dates in November for a week, Tuesday to Tuesday. On Lufthansa's website, it was over $15,000. You can get a better deal on Kayak, but there's not a flight cheaper than $7,500.
Yeah,
that is the cheapest, and those are on airlines that are a little bit lesser than the ones we're about to feature.
Yep. So the bottom line, the airlines want to sell these tickets, obviously, if they can get people to pay cash for them. And so because there's only 6 or 8 seats on each flight, a lot of times the award availability is more constrained. So we're going to talk about what options are out there and what hoops you might have to jump through to give yourself a good chance at being able to book one of these first class tickets with miles. All right, so first up, let's kind of work our way up the hierarchy of first class.
Yeah, before we do that, let's specify though that we're talking about Europe. So we're talking about your options for in that first class cabin, not a business class, but a true first class cabin to Europe.
All right, so the airlines that operate first class cabins, you've got American Airlines, British Airways. You've got Etihad, which is a partner of American and connects through Abu Dhabi. So you're going to be connecting in the Middle East. You've also got Emirates, which has a Fifth Freedom flight from JFK to Milan. There's also ways that you can connect through Dubai. And so you've got a couple of options there. You've got Singapore Airlines, which operates a Fifth Freedom from JFK to Frankfurt, Germany, and also from Houston to Manchester. The Houston to Manchester one is a new one. That used to be a flight to Moscow. And they, I guess, I think it was related to the oil business. Obviously, that's a huge thing for Houston's economy. And so they've moved that from Moscow, which is a less useful destination for sure for travel to Europe. And now they've got that flight operated to Manchester. And then we've got Lufthansa. They're really the only available European carrier that has a great first class product that's actually bookable with miles for most people. And I'm grouping Lufthansa and Swiss together because they have the same frequent flyer program. They are separate airlines and both of them have really nice first class products. But Lufthansa has a lot more routes to the US that involve a first class cabin. And then the last one is Air France. Air France is a little bit tricky because it's only bookable if you're an elite with the Air France Flying Blue program. Okay, so those are the high-level overview of the options here. And what we've run into time and time again is that business class is not terribly tricky to figure out how to book, but because of the first class availability, a lot of times the only seats that are open for first class tickets are very, very close to departure. So Lufthansa is a really good example of this, where if you search for flights, let's say the 20th of October, you're going to find all kinds of options in first class. But if you search for next summer, you're not going to find anything.
Unless you have Lufthansa miles.
Exactly.
So if you're talking about booking on a partner, that's that 2 week. Yep. Is that a hard cutoff, or is that just like a general kind of?
That's what seems to happen. Yeah, it's not a written policy by any means, but so Lufthansa, they're like Singapore in the sense that they give, like you said, more award tickets to their own members. The problem for U.S. folks is that it's hard to get Lufthansa miles. So the options here, you can transfer SPG points, which can be a good option, but it's a good way to burn through a lot of SPG points fast.
Right.
And the second one is that there is a miles and more card from Barclay, which typically has a bonus anywhere from 30 to 50,000.
Man, I have no idea about Lufthansa's chart. Is it comparable to United? I'm guessing zone based. Is it?
Yeah, but it's a little bit more expensive, and there's high taxes and fees. So ideally, actually, if you want to fly Lufthansa, United's the right program. You just got to structure this right and be okay with flying lowly business class unless you get lucky.
Right.
Okay, so we were talking about this a little bit before we started recording. There is a really good way to get around that limited availability. And so what we recommend for booking first class is that you want to find a business class award that you can confirm with a type of miles that you have enough points to also book first class. So let's start with the Lufthansa example. You've got United miles and you would like to fly Lufthansa first, but you can't find any availability, and you're not willing to wait till 2 weeks before departure to have a ticket,
right?
Because you're going to make other plans. So your strategy is to find a business class award to Europe, and that could be on United's own product on Polaris, that could be on any of their Star Alliance partners. There's a lot of options to make that work, and you shouldn't have too much trouble confirming a ticket with United miles in business class. And so what you're going to do is book that ticket and hang on to those extra points. Make sure you've got enough to cover the cost of the upgrade. And then you're going to check the last 2 weeks before departure. You're going to see if one of those first class seats opens up on Lufthansa. And if it does, all you got to do is pay a change fee to United, which is about $150 per person. So not super cheap. But
considering though,
if you're excited about first class.
Like we said, look up how much these flights cost, and maybe you wouldn't spend your money that way, but you are getting substantially more, and that's a tiny fee considering the experience.
Yep. Now, Chase or United miles is just an example here. And so there's actually a much better way to save that $150 fee. So I wanted to leave that one, start that with that one as the first example, because that's kind of the worst case scenario where you're going to pay one of the U.S. airlines change fees, which is $150 to $200 typically. But the other option is that if you have Singapore miles, the change fee for Singapore's program is only $35 per person. So that's a big difference. And so what you can do is you can use Singapore KrisFlyer miles, book a business class itinerary on any Star Alliance carrier, and then keep an eye on those Lufthansa seats and make that upgrade to Lufthansa first class at the last minute and only pay $35 per person to get that upgrade.
Yeah, that's well worth it, man. And I mean, without overcomplicating it, I'm imagining just set a calendar reminder 2 weeks out of your flight and head on over to the website and to see if there's anything showing there, and then maybe check once a day. And you've got a couple weeks for them to maybe open up a seat, maybe somebody cancels, and then you're there.
Yep, and United's a good place to look. So once you're within that 2-week window, United, even if you booked through Singapore or Aeroplan or ANA or whatever other program, you can use United's search tool and you'll see those Lufthansa first class flights showing up. And then once you see them on United's website, then you call Singapore or Aeroplan. Aeroplan, by the way, is also not a terrible deal. I think their change fee is about $70. So definitely way better than paying a full $150 to make the change. That's sort of the Star Alliance route. Now, Lufthansa, like I said, is one of the ones that hopefully it'll be there, but if it's not, you're only going to know 2 weeks before departure. There's actually a little bit better hedge that involves Singapore, but because Singapore just has 2 routes to Europe, there's not as many options here. There's a lot more routes out of Germany that go to the U.S. And the Houston to Manchester at the moment today is not operating a first class cabin. The plus side is the business class is pretty nice because it's on the new A350s, but they only have business class as the highest. So the Singapore Fifth Freedom route that you want to look for first class is the JFK to Frankfurt, and you can run that in either direction of travel. And so the strategy with KrisFlyer can be a little bit different because Singapore allows you to put a waitlist request in for a award ticket. And the sequencing is really important for this one. So let's say I want to fly from, let's just take a one-way example. I want to fly back from Europe. And my goal is that Frankfurt to JFK first class flight. But I want to use my Singapore miles to book that backup plan. So I'm going to transfer either Citi or Chase or Amex over to Singapore. But I'm going to transfer the number of points that I need for the first class ticket. Right? So right now, the Frankfurt to JFK, I think, is about 75,000 points per person. So I'm going to transfer that whole amount. And as soon as I have that in my Singapore account, the balance, then I'm allowed to waitlist for one of those awards. And so Singapore, I'd say about double the availability for the waitlist as there is to just confirm a ticket. So on Singapore's website, you can go and search through those dates, find a date that's available with a waitlist, and you put in a request. As long as you've got enough miles, you can request multiple dates. So I could request like 5 different flights
Whatever
that would
works
potentially work. Yeah. I don't need to have 5 times the points, just enough for one of them. Once the request is made, then you can spend those miles. And so the next step is to confirm your business class ticket through the Singapore program.
Yeah, okay.
So you waitlist 3 or 4 JFK to Frankfurt flights, and then I would highly recommend booking the Manchester flight as your backup plan to your business class on the A350. And then you just wait. And if any of those emails come in from Singapore saying they've got your seat for you, all you got to do is pay that $35 fee and they can upgrade your ticket to first class. And you're going to be changing. You want to make sure you don't book any flights to position before you've got this sorted out. But the big plus here is that the wait list tends to open up much further in advance than the Lufthansa availability. So with this one, if you're looking at travel next summer in Europe, I would say that you probably have a pretty decent chance of getting off the wait list by the first of the year. And so that's a much different picture in terms of giving yourself more time to plan.
Is there another frequent flyer program that allows you to just autonomously through the website put yourself on a wait list?
Can't think of any.
Yeah, because I didn't know about that. That's a new concept to me because I was thinking about different things airline programs could possibly do to make more money. I was thinking like an auction thing. You put in your bid for what you'd be willing to pay. Like, because I know that some airlines actually do that. Where I'm trying to think which airline it is, where you can put in like a bid to get upgraded, and they may accept it or something like that.
Yeah, I know what you're
like
talking
an
about.
auction style.
I don't know off the top of my head. So those are probably the two best strategies, I would say. The other one that I was dealing with a little bit today is Etihad, because they've got really nice business and first class. And up until recently, up until August, you could use American Miles and book Etihad. And if you could find the availability on the Etihad website, you could book it. You just have to call American. It would be a little bit of a pain, but within a few minutes, you could get this booked. Well, Etihad has stopped allowing American to book those Saver Awards, except for within 30 days. So it's much more of a Lufthansa type scenario where you are going to wait till the last minute to find out if the upgrade's going to work. But American Airlines, there's a lot of ways to use AA miles to get to Europe, and a lot of them don't involve British Airways with those high fuel surcharges. Right. So confirm something in business. One good thing is that if you upgrade an American Airlines award, a lot of times they will not charge you the change fee, which is $150. So it's a substantial fee, but I would certainly talk to a supervisor. I think at least half the time you're going to get that waived. It doesn't seem to be a hard policy. Like somebody's either having a good day and they're gonna work with you or not. But there's a chance of getting the fee waived, and so Etihad is a really good option where book something in business class through American. I would recommend using Finnair or Iberia or American Airlines operated flights. Those are the ways that you can avoid those fuel surcharges, get something that works for you, and then see if you can change that and book through Etihad and upgrade to first class.
Man, I'd be very curious I'd like to fly Etihad Premium because I flew economy, and I remember I was impressed by their economy class.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, it was also on like a brand new A380, which is like a pretty cool experience. But yeah, man, for those that have seen the apartment suites and classes, that's Etihad that does the like apartment.
yeah, they do the residence as well.
Yeah,
you got a butler and a three-room suite.
Yeah,
basically.
ridiculous.
That is much harder to book with miles, incidentally, unfortunately. Okay, so a couple of other options just to keep in mind. If you're an elite with Air France, you can potentially book through the Flying Blue program, but they reserve first class for people that have elite status with Air France. So if you don't, business class is the best you're going to be able to do there. Emirates is a pretty awesome option. They've got a flight from JFK to Milan, another Fifth Freedom, and that one is occasionally available in first class. The big problem with that is it's a little bit harder to play the game of booking a safety through that program and then upgrading. Alaska is the partner that probably works the best for this, where if you're using Alaska miles, you can book something on either American or British Airways to Europe in business class, and then make the change and convert that into an Emirates ticket and pay the Alaska change fee.
Right.
So that's about it. Unfortunately, first class, there's not a ton of different ways to do it, but this one, I think, for most people, if you're willing to wait into the last week to know for sure if you got that first class upgrade and if you're okay with the business class, this is a way that I'd say 80 or 90% of the time is going to work out in your favor, especially if you got a couple of days of flexibility and you can make an adjustment towards the departure window and be able to make a change.
This is really valuable stuff. If you contrast this, and it is work, but if you contrast this against the average flight booking experience, I've got my miles. Let me go to the website. There's no flights. Miles are worthless. This is just like a golden example of the, not even arbitrage, but just options that aren't made readily available and on demand.
Make it easy. Yeah. All right. Well, by the way, if you want this first class and you don't want all the work involved, hire the booking service. We will book you in something safe in nice business class, and then we will check every day, sit there and refresh our little computer screens until we find you that first class ticket. We got really good systems and a couple of services that we pay for that help us know as soon as a seat goes into inventory. So this is something we'd be happy to do for you if you don't find it fun to spend a bunch of time.
You can always just
clicking around.
Pay us to do it for you.
All right. That's going to do it for this week. Anything else you want to share before we get to the interview?
Man, that's it. I mean, I guess for folks that are, geared up for adventure travel, if anyone knows what the Adventurous website is, you probably want to listen to this because, the Mongol Rally is something that I don't have a bucket list, but if I had one, this would be on it.
Yeah. Well, hey, man, let's get into Broder's team. We got some work to do first, but I think we should field a team. And the other thing that's nice about this, I talk a little bit with her on the interview, but this is a charity event. So you raise money, you have to pay, I think, at least £1,000 for a charity, and about half of it goes to their charity. The other half can go to a charity of your choice. But super cool cause. It's kind of sad in a way that you gotta like do something as ridiculous as drive through like
Right.
22 countries to get people's attention, to give them, get them to give you money.
Right.
But
Is
they've
this
done a great
is this
job.
the Save the Rainforest charity?
So one of them, I think it's called Cool Earth, and it's about representing indigenous communities and helping them protect
Okay.
areas of the rainforest. And then Crystal actually has a couple of very cool charities that she chose to give
nice.
the other parts of her donations to. So we'll let her speak for herself, and see you at the end of the show.
Yeah, take care, everybody.
Today's featured traveler is Crystal Kelly. She has been on a ton of different adventures around the world. And there's one in particular that I was really excited to talk with you about. Crystal, thanks so much for joining us on the show.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So when you reached out, you had mentioned a bunch of really interesting adventures, and one of them really caught my attention because it was something that AJ and I have been talking about doing at some point, and that's the Mongol Rally. Can you tell us, just give us kind of a quick rundown of what that is, and tell me the story about how you found out about this?
Yeah, so the Mongol Rally is basically, there's only two rules. One, you have to have a crappy car. It's got to be just the most scrap junk you can find. And it has to be smaller than a 1-liter engine. So it has to be a really tiny car. And those are the only rules. And then you start in England and you drive from England to the finish line, which is, it's actually in Ulan-Ude, Russia now, but you still kind of go through Mongolia to get to the finish line. So it is still the Mongol Rally, but the finish line is in Russia.
I read something strange, like they moved the finish line because of like vehicle import taxes or something crazy like that. Is that true?
And yes, and also Mongolia, they were getting kind of a lot of these ralliers coming every year, and a lot of people were just kind of leaving their car in the country and just, flying away. So Mongolia, actually, the year that I was doing the rally, they kind of made a drama. And they were like, no, we don't want any more of you ralliers to come into our country, so we're going to put this ridiculous kind of fine that you have to pay if you try and leave your car in Mongolia. Wow. So it was much cheaper for kind of the company doing the Mongol Rally for them to ship the cars from Russia, but also now because of the whole Mongolia being really upset about people leaving their kind of scrap cars there, you have to, if you go for Mongolia, you have to get your car out of Mongolia, whether you tie it to a yak or what, but it's gotta get to Russia somehow.
Wow. Okay. So. Super cool. So the route though, so you start in the UK. So that means you're covering the part of Europe that most people know, Eastern Europe. And then when I was looking at maps, there were like a ton of different ways that people got from Europe to Mongolia. Some folks went above the Black Sea through Russia. Folks went through Turkey. Just like the geography of this was really interesting. Tell me about what was your route?
So the route that I chose was kind of the central route. So I did Europe, and then I went down through Turkey, and then I went to kind of Georgia and Azerbaijan, and I wanted to cross the Caspian Sea from Azerbaijan into Turkmenistan. And then I did all of the stands. So, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, all of the stands. And then I eventually, went into Mongolia, and I did make it to the finish.
Very cool. So that was actually a part that I was really interested in looking at. So from Georgia or Azerbaijan across the Caspian Sea, that's basically, is that just avoiding going through Iran? Would that be the land route to go south and drive through Iran?
So I've actually lived in the Middle East, and I am fluent in Arabic, but I didn't want to do Iran for the rally. That was more for personal reasons. Just because I felt like Iran in itself, I've never been there, and I feel like it's a special country that I don't want to just drive through it in a few days.
Sure.
But also, in order to go through the Iran route, you have to have a carnet, which is really expensive for your vehicle. You have to have this kind of special thing, and you have to pay to have kind of a Iranian guide meet you at the border, and then you have to have that guide in the vehicle with you kind of the entire time you're in Iran. Now, some of the ralliers were kind of convoying together, so they were sort of sharing the fees of the guide, but still it was really costly and expensive for people doing the Iran route. Wow. So I thought I would save some money and, save Iran for later and just kind of do the Caspian Sea. Besides, I also had an interest in doing Azerbaijan and, just kind of the idea of trying to catch this, ferry boat that no one even knows exists. It's like a unicorn, Yep. And to kind of enter into Turkmenistan, that in itself to me sounded like an adventure, When else are you going to do that? So.
Oh, absolutely. Did you run into any other issues in terms of crossing borders? Any like surprises or delays? Like I looked at this list and I'm like, I have no idea if I need a visa for like any of these countries, but I'm sure that there's some, there's some interesting requirements depending on where you're from.
Because I have been living internationally, my passport is covered with a whole bunch of just crazy visas. So I had some issues, of course. Every time I hand my passport to anyone, it looks like, a book because I had extended pages in it. Mm-hmm. And everyone is just looking at every single page, every single visa. And I definitely, the Russians, they did pull me aside into a building, into a kind of room, and they were questioning me because of, I had some visas that were Arabic. From Egypt. Mm-hmm. And so they were like, are you affiliated with terrorists kind of a thing? And, I'm blonde and, I don't know. But, I look Russian like they do. And, the guy was very serious and he was asking a lot of questions. But then once he finished his questions, he just started laughing and joking as if, that was just part of his job and, move on with it. So that was kind of just small stuff. As far as the stands are definitely the trickier countries. So Uzbekistan was kind of a funny border crossing, but I will say that the worst was by far Turkmenistan. And Turkmenistan is kind of a mix between, let's say, North Korea and, I would say some other kind of communist country. It's a very weird place, Turkmenistan. And from Azerbaijan, when we kind of crossed the sea, which in itself took like over a week, this whole process.
Wow, really?
Yeah, it took a week to get a ferry boat and manage kind of getting on the ferry boat. And we were stuck on the sea for 2 days because Turkmenistan wouldn't let us enter. And my visa expired. So I was sitting on this boat in the Caspian Sea with an expired Turkmenistan visa. And we were going to dock literally the day after it was expired. So when I got there, I was kind of like, either they're going to throw me in prison immediately for not having a visa, or either maybe I can get another one. I don't know. I really had no idea.
Wow. And so you had just gotten that prepared beforehand, but it just took longer than expected to make the ferry trip. And so by the time you guys actually landed, you just didn't have validity for your visa anymore. Yeah,
pretty much. I had a letter of invitation, which everyone needs to go to Turkmenistan. It's a very strict country, and they're really, really guarded about their country. So you have to have this letter of invitation, which I had. But I kind of wasn't sure about just rocking up to the border with just the LOI. So I thought to be safe, I would go to the embassy when I was in Baku and get my visa. Well, the visa only lasts for 5 days. It's a transit visa,
Gotcha.
Which is not a very big window when you're waiting for this ferry boat. And I thought I was intelligent, so I thought that I made my visa not start that day that I went to the embassy. I made it for a few days ahead, thinking that I would, time it just right. And it ended up taking about a week for the ferry boat situation to sort itself out. So it did expire when I was on the boat. Wow. So that was just kind of bad luck on my part.
But they let you in. They didn't throw you back into the Caspian Sea.
No, I didn't have to go to prison or anything like that. So they did let me get a new visa. Of course, I had to buy a new one, and everything is, police bribes and all this kind of stuff. So you don't know how much is actual kind of government money and how much is actually bribe money for the guys.
Sure.
But so I did get my visa and I was able to go to Turkmenistan, but it was definitely a crazy ordeal. And that was a full 24 hours in the border. immigration. So that was pretty painful, especially because it's like 50 degrees Celsius and you're boiling hot and you're just, miserable from 2 days on the boat anyways.
Yeah, I get frustrated when it takes like, an hour to get off an airplane, let alone, I can only imagine.
Oh, yeah, the rally
spoiled.
will definitely, it will give you a new sense for kind of patience. I've also never been very patient, but you definitely learn how to just go with the flow and chill, and you find things to entertain yourself. You really do. So, yeah.
Tell me a little bit about why you decided to do this and why you ended up going alone. Were you not, was that initially what you set out, is to do this solo, or did you just couldn't find any friends that were crazy enough to join you? Tell me a little bit about the process of getting ready for this.
Yeah, when I found out about it, because I have done the Mongol Derby a few years ago, which is it's a horse race in Mongolia, and it's through the same company that's doing the Mongol Rally. So I'd already kind of heard of the Mongol Rally for a few years now, but I never really had someone to go with me. And then when I was working in Egypt and just kind of feeling sorry for myself at one point, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to book the ticket and I'm just going to sign up for it, even though I don't have a teammate. And I really, really wanted an adventure with friends. I've been traveling solo for about 7 years now. So I liked the idea of the rally because it's kind of like, a road trip with your pals. Mm-hmm. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to sign up, and then I'm just going to magically find my best friend, between now and when it starts, and everything will be fine. So I traveled around a bit and I couldn't find anyone crazy enough to join my team. And then so I already I bought the car, and I was, I just kind of bought it on eBay. So I did everything kind of from afar. And then I kind of organized my flight to England, and, I started sort of preparing everything, and I had my route and my visas. And then I kind of just shot a message out on a Facebook group saying, hey, does anyone want to join me? And someone did kind of reply, an American boy, and he was quite young. And I had a red flag, but I was like, you know what? I just want a teammate. So, meet me in England and let's do this. And he comes literally, I think, 2 days before the kind of rally starts. So I had already got my car, bought a bunch of stuff for it, fixed it up. I did everything by myself. Mm-hmm. And then he kind of rocks up 2 days before, doesn't know how to drive a stick, which I didn't know. And his idea of kind of traveling was sort of backpacking in a way where, some of these party people where they spend one night in a city and then they move on and get drunk in the next night, or, and he was just not my style of travel, let's say. Uh-huh. And we just clashed almost immediately. And I literally I think 3 days after the rally started, I drove him to the city of Vienna and I said, get out. So from then on, I started doing the rally solo by myself.
Wow. Well, it sounds like, especially considering the amount of travel that you had ahead of you, probably made the right decision doing that early on. It might have been a little bit harder to drop him in Turkmenistan or
Well, exactly. And, there were so many ralliers. He ended up hitchhiking with other teams. So there were so many other ralliers in Europe itself. It was very easy for people to kind of team up and hitchhike and whatever. I ended up picking up a hitchhiker later on in Romania, and she kind of hitchhiked with me a couple of times. We kind of got separated for like a week, and then she kind of found me again, and then we got separated again, and then she found me again. So we did that. She hitchhiked in my car for a little bit. But there was a lot of people who just clashed with their teammates, and they clashed really early on because, it's a lot of time alone in a car with somebody, especially a total stranger. But even if it's somebody that you kind of knew beforehand, if you guys don't really agree or get along on everything, it's going to come up in the rally.
Yeah.
And it's going to come up times
stressful situation too. Depending on how much experience your teammates have with travel, everybody's got their sort of threshold of comfort. And I can imagine that this list of, this kind of an itinerary puts pretty much everybody outside of their comfort zone at one point or another.
Oh, definitely.
I can imagine that.
And especially as a woman, and I am experienced in, let's say, countries that as a woman are more difficult. So I know how to kind of keep myself safe, and I kind of know what to expect, but it doesn't make it any easier. So, I kind of wanted that comfort of having a man in my car, because when I go in the stands, they'll see me with a man and assume that we're married or whatever, and they'll leave me alone.
Yep.
So I kind of liked, the idea of having that security blanket. So when I was doing it by myself and, I decided to just keep going, I really had a moment where I thought about quitting, just because I just didn't want to deal with the stress and harassment that I would face as a woman, by myself.
Yep.
And, I was, definitely, like you said, people do have a lot of stressful situations. It is a lot of, extreme situations that you don't deal with on a normal basis. So they could be your best friend in a normal situation.
Yeah.
But as soon as these kind of stressful things happen, how are they going to react to it? How are you going to react to it? And how are you guys going to handle it together? I think that's something very important that you have to establish before it gets crazy.
Yeah. Did you learn anything new about solo traveling, especially as a woman? Anything that that hadn't come up in other experiences that this trip brought to your attention and changed about the way you do things?
Actually, for me, I think the biggest eye-opening thing I had was not necessarily directly myself, but what I witnessed from others. Uh-huh. So I had a few women hitchhikers, and I had a couple of men as well, but for some reason I was getting a lot of girls, probably because I was in a bright pink car. So I was getting kind of a lot of women, and a lot of them, they were actually, I think, very relieved when they were with me, because they were having some issues. They weren't teammates with men that were their, boyfriends or something. They were kind of girls that had paired up with men that they knew from college or whatever. And, when they were with me, they were kind of relieved, because the men that they had been traveling with didn't really understand, when the girls were having kind of issues with the local men, or when kind of situations would come up, the men just didn't even notice or didn't pay attention to it. And I'm very aware of it, because, I've been dealing with it for years now. So they were really kind of relieved to travel with me. And it was kind of interesting for me to travel with other people and to be able to kind of share it, even if it was just for a few days or, whatever it was, from one country to the next or whatever. But, to kind of see it from their eyes as well, and to experience things kind of new, fresh eyes. Yeah. Because when you're kind of living abroad for a really long time, it starts to sort of become normal to you, and you forget what it's like to see, crazy stuff like a donkey cart in the fast lane on the freeway. That becomes kind of normal to you. And then you see it from your passenger's eyes, and they're like, oh my God, and they're taking 100 pictures of it. And you're kind of like, oh yeah, you're right. That is kind of funny. So yeah, to me, I think it was more just nice seeing things with fresh eyes, and also being able to share these kind of things with other women and to experience it together and kind of help each other with it. So I actually quite liked that.
Very cool. Very cool. So this is a hell of an adventure. Do you have anything else planned? Are there any next ones on your list, or what's next for you travel wise?
So I definitely have other adventures planned. So I missed the kind of nomadic games when I was driving through Kyrgyzstan. I missed it by just a couple of days because I wanted to kind of blast it to the finish line. So I would like to go back to the nomadic games this year in Kyrgyzstan. And I plan on I'm making a trip to Bhutan. I had started a couple of years ago a horse riding, the very first and only horse riding in the entire country of Bhutan. So I'm going to go back. It's been a while since I've been there. I think it was 2012. So I'm going to go back and bring some people with me who ride horses and just kind of experience Bhutan again. So yeah, I have kind of a few things planned, but those are definitely to-dos.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. If people want to reach out to you, I'm sure that lots of listeners that, have kind of considered solo travel or want to take some kind of adventure would love to connect with you and learn more about your experience. I probably missed out on some of the questions that I should have asked. So how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, definitely. I have Facebook page and I have Instagram, but the easiest way is probably to just find my website and then, you can add me on Instagram or whatever. But it's chriscolumbustravel.com and it's spelled Krys and then Columbus, KOLUMBUS travel.com. So that's the best way.
Okay, awesome. And we will have that in the show notes as well as links to Crystal on social media. Thank you so much. It was great talking with you and sharing this story.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was a lot of fun.
All right, that's going to do it for this week's show. Thank you so much for being with us.
Hey, brothers, don't be shy. Hop over to the website and join our email list for exclusive travel hacking content. If you like what we're up to, the best way you can support the show is by leaving us a 5-star review on iTunes. Lastly, we would love